Hey guys, Forrest Proctor here from epicfilmandphoto.com. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Nikon buying Red. Okay, so I'm sure you've seen the news in the last 2 days. I saw some stuff in my feed and on YouTube just 2 days ago talking about the acquisition or the possibility that Red might be buying Nikon. We woke up this morning to basically my YouTube being broken with all the videos showing that Nikon is actually inquiring Red. They're in the negotiation slash paperwork process, if you will, of this. Now we're going to talk about what that means, a little bit of history of Red and Nikon's battle, especially last year in their court lawsuit, and some things that I would like to see going forward. If you have not liked and subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do that. I make videos that cover mostly video, but some photo content and yeah, stuff like this. And we do like to jump on bandwagons when there's a big hot news thing coming out. And I am a Red owner, so this is not just me getting on here talking about this because it's like the hot topic. I'm actually interested in this because there are some things that I would like Nikon to do going forward to help me in my workflow. If you've watched the channel for any amount of time, you know that my main camera that I use for professional work is my Red Scarlett X, which is a camera that came out in 2012. It's like a legacy camera at this point, but we're going to get into some of the things I'd like to see. That way we can start using some features that we don't have in those older cameras. If you don't know, last year Red and Nikon were in a lawsuit battle pertaining to Red's patent on their RAW Kodak, which has been an ongoing debate for many years, ever since basically Red was started. And they basically have patented the ability to shoot RAW video, which makes absolutely no sense because, as we know, all the other camera companies have their own format of RAW photos, yet Red is the only one who's allowed to do RAW video. And all that stuff, you can research that. There's plenty of really good in-depth videos about that lawsuit and about what all that means. I am not the best person to tell you about that, but I do think it's important for the story. So last year they were in court cases, Nikon and Red, because Nikon put this RAW ability inside of one of their cameras, the Z9, and it caused a bunch of controversy and caused a lawsuit. So fast forward to today, Nikon is now purchasing Red. Now we can speculate all day, and I will definitely do that right now, on what happened. I personally think that with the release of Red's phone that was a complete flop and failure, the high price of their cameras and the high price of development, and given the fact that they're not a public traded company, they are a standalone company, I think Red is not as financially sound as, obviously they're not as financially sound as a company like Nikon, Canon, or Sony, which is like the king of all of this, and they're probably laughing right now at this whole process. But I think that Red probably chomped at the bit when Nikon came to them after the lawsuit and said, hey, listen, we want your RAW format. We have money, resources to help you develop your cinema cameras even more. We would like to buy you, and basically the technology can trickle up and the finances and resources can trickle down. That's personally what I think happened, and Red was probably in a position, not that they were in a position where they couldn't say no, but they were in a position that strongly urged them and made them feel like they should say yes. And obviously they did say yes, and that's where we are now. Now, going forward, there's a lot of people online that are kind of like critical of this purchase because Nikon really hasn't offered a lot to filmmakers in the last, let's say, 20 years. But I will say with the Z9, which I had a chance to shoot with when I was in Atlanta, they are making efforts to do that and to get into the video space. And for a company like Nikon, as big as they are, and watching their direct competitor Canon basically split their customer base into video and photo, I'm sure they have been strategizing on how do we get into this at the quickest rate and be profitable the fastest. There's no real better way than buying the camera company that has probably the most mystique and culture built around it. Red cameras, even though they're good, they're not like leaps and bounds beyond other cameras, but there is something about Red cameras that have, they do turn heads. So this is probably a really good purchase for Nikon when it comes to getting into that video space. Now, I used to use a Nikon for video, mainly because it was right when I was starting out. It was super cheap on eBay, and I can tell you, right now. It was one of their DSLRs. I can't remember what it was, the D3200 something something. It was complete trash. I used it for 2 weddings and it was just absolutely terrible. Nikon is more of a photography, wildlife specifically, and I do know a lot of wedding photographers that still use Nikon, but more and more are switching over to Sony, and we'll get into Sony in a second. So yeah, I think this is a good purchase for Nikon. Is this a good purchase for Red? Probably so. There's been rumors over the years that their finances are not sound, and this should help them out in that area and also help them with the development side of things. Now, let's talk about development, because we know that Red makes their sensors in-house, and we know that Nikon does not. So there's another bit of information that we can use to basically put two and two together and think that, okay, Nikon probably wants access to building their own sensors. And if it's not for their photography cameras, certainly they might in the future come out with their own, price-friendly video cameras, and they can use Red's technology to make sensors for that while still making sensors for the Red cameras. Now, I did read that Red is still going to be a standalone company. They're not going to be changing the name as far as we know. They're not changing it to yellow and like changing the camera to yellow, which I saw a YouTuber talking about, which would actually be kind of funny and ironic. Now, they are going to be having to deal with the issue that the newer modern Red cameras are taking the RF mount, which is a Canon mount. And, Canon and Nikon to me is like Liverpool and Manchester City. I mean, they could not be bigger competitors, bigger rivals. If you told me what's the biggest camera rivalry, at least in the photography space in the world, I would say Nikon and Canon. Even though I think Canon is probably, double in their influence, double in their size. Everybody I work with shoots with Canon or Sony. Nikon is just kind of slowly going down, and that's just another thing. I think it's a win-win for both companies, because Nikon's going to get that technology. Their press and their stock has probably gone up a little bit today and yesterday, I would think, just because of all the press that they're getting and the fact that they acquired, one of the camera companies is at least in the top 3 when it comes to cinema cameras. I would think Arri, Red, and Sony, honestly. And then there's all the little guys who are always scratching and fighting, like Blackmagic and Panasonic and stuff like that. But all to say that I've got weird vibes about it. I'm not super excited about it, but I'm also not super hurt by it. I don't think that they're gonna demolish the company or anything. I think it's more of a ambiguous thing where they're gonna use their technology. They're also gonna pour some money into Red that they probably desperately need. Now, some things I would like to see going forward. Before I talk about those, please in the comments below tell me how you feel about this. Are you happy about it? Are you super mad about it? Are there things that you're like crossing your fingers hoping that won't go away? Are there things that you're desperate to see or desperate for them to implement now that they have the backing of Nikon? Please go down in the comments and tell me what they are. And now I'm going to tell you mine. Now, number one thing, I own a legacy Red camera. It is a Red Scarlet X from 2012. It shoots RAW, 5K, useless, 4K, useful video. And I really love that camera. I don't use it for the slow motion. I have the R6 that I use for slow motion. I have this R that I'm shooting on now if I need to shoot some 60 frame stuff. But I would like to see them give us the ability to use different media other than Red mags. Now, if you've watched my video about the Red Scarlet, you're going to say, Forrest, you're being a hypocrite. You said you love Red mags. I do love Red mags because they're robust. They're like a tank of an SSD. I love them for that. But now that everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon of, buy an old Red, those Red mags are going up and up. Now, I happen to have 7 of them. I don't see myself needing any in the future, but for my fellow Red users, I would love to see them open that camera up and give us the ability to use the T7s or just basically run a USB-C out of it and use whatever the hell we want. Like, to me, that was, Red has always been like, they've guarded their product, and on one front, I can respect that, but I think they've done it at the cost of the consumer. And they've kind of, they've done it at the cost of the small-time filmmaker. The bigger Hollywood people, they don't care. They'll buy 100 Red mags. It's not a big deal. But for us who, want to use a Red, but, maybe don't have a team or a one-man band or a company of one, it would be nice to see Nikon just do something like, build a dummy SSD that we can plug into it and then, throw in our own media or an SD card or something like that. Okay, so the second thing, I don't want to see them get rid of the RF mount. Now, they're direct competitors with Canon, so, it could definitely happen, and they could throw the Nikon mount on there, but they just don't offer, I don't think, enough cinematic glass or cinematic glass at all to even justify that. So hopefully they won't get rid of it. I'm thinking they're just going to make a mount for Nikon and leave it at that. That's really what I hope they do. The other thing I would like to see them do is one of two things, or maybe both. Start developing some lower end, not even lower end, but more affordable RED cameras. Because they have more resources and more finances and more development abilities, I think they can do that, or I kind of know they can do that. It's just a matter of if they're going to do that. And then also, I'd like to see Nikon make their own cinema camera and use RED and their development skills to implement the sensor on that side. So I could see it going both ways, and maybe you split it where RED's going to keep making the high-end cameras like they always have, but now they've got the backing of Nikon, and then Nikon's going to use the sensor technology over here to make their own budget-friendly cinema cameras, something similar to like a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K and something like that. And that really needs some competition, because to me that's the only camera in that space. They kind of, and Canon's got some cameras, the C100 Mark II, which I think they just discontinued. But there's nobody really in that space except for Blackmagic, so I could kind of see that happening. Again, please go in the comments, tell me what you guys think. I am going to go back inside and edit for about 6 hours. I just came out here to make this video, felt convicted to talk about it as a RED user, and as somebody who has used Nikon in the past. I just wanted to get my thoughts out about it. Love to hear your thoughts. If you have not liked and subscribed to the channel, please do. All the support is greatly appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.